Hello there, friends. Before we jump into it, if you like what we do here on cPDH.guide, the YouTube, and you want to support us in a free way, because, you know, that's what friends do, hit that like, hit that subscribe, even share the damn thing. All right, on to the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the cPDH.guide channel with your classic host, as always, me, Puzzlebox Dallas, one who always hosts on this channel, followed with my surprise guest that you guys would never expect to see here, Clay. How's it going, Clay?
It's going really well. That's great.
So yeah, we're here today because our man Clay had a little special some happen over the weekend. RIW happened, for those of you who don't know. Big old in-person pauper tournament that some people in our community went and traveled to up in Detroit, right?
Yeah, Detroit. For those in Detroit, it's Livonia or whatever. But
Detroit area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't want to offend.
Did you say
it was
showed up?
It was 28. 28. We still had we had 14 people travel up last year. We had 14 people also travel up this year. So the broader representation was still there. Got some new blood in, that sort of stuff. But we had 28 people in. Here's an interesting note about those 28 people. So there's a competing store in the Livonia area. The name escapes me at the moment. My apologies, Ryan and crew. But they all showed up. It was like 9 people. They all showed up in their store jerseys. So you had a crew of brewers from a local store show up to another local store with their jerseys on, and I thought that was badass. So
that's awesome. That's good energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for those of you who don't know, Clay ended up taking down the tournament, getting first with the good old classic Lay Weaver, Lore Weaver. So we're here to talk about that, and since Clay can't really interview himself, although I'm sure he could, we're here to provide some soundboard for Clay to talk about the experience of it.
There was a bet that I would do like something like this and then something like this and then stitch them together. I'm not that creative, y'all.
That's too much editing. Gotta splice it together and all that. So I suppose the simplest place to start is just talking about the tournament as a whole, you know, talking about the experience, what kind of decks showed up, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I can't speak for, I have yet to go to a Riches to Rag, so I can't say that it's dissimilar, but I presume that it'd be similar in a certain kind of way. These in-person tournaments are something else. They're not like a MagicCon where you've got the thrum and hum of, like, you know, thousands and thousands of people, and then you get kind of lost in the mix of being out on the floor. It's a little bit different. It's a lot more of a, to use a word, intimate, in the fact that you're traveling there. We were able to score. Bobby set us up with a Airbnb again this year, so we had a little bit of a home base to kind of meet up and, you know, jam some games and practice and theory craft on Friday night. And these smaller events, whether it be, you know, an RIW or you know, Philly type of event, is really about the camaraderie of the crew. All these people that you're like, I got to meet Hive for the first time. Tony Baloney, you know, for the first time. Like, you get to meet these people that you interact with online and like have a beer and adult conversation, you know, that sort of thing. If you do, and that's you out there, if you do show up to if you're a part of the PDH community and you show up to one of these events, Friday night, I usually host a dinner somewhere and we get everybody together and we'll sit there and just, you know, have a meal and do the thing and all that stuff. And yeah, so we probably jammed until, well, I jammed until about 1:00 Friday night, and then because I'm old, I had to get some sleep. But people were still playing in the house when I was going to bed, and yeah, we all got up in the morning, headed over, got some breakfast, had, you know, either internal or external, and headed over to the event. We were there. Some of us were there kind of early because it was kind of confusing when they were going to open up and start registration, but a registration started at 11. By then, all of the PDH crew was there and helping set up the place. And it was kind of interesting because registration was between 11 and noon, and about, I don't know, 11:30, it was still just kind of us. So we were like, But after 11:30, people just started pouring in the doors. It started to fill up. You could feel the buzz and all of that stuff. And everybody got their deck list registered, and we suited up and engaged in battle.
So yeah, really disappointed I couldn't make it this year, but it's always a blast. In-person events are really something special. So in terms of meta comparison to like the online meta, what would you say that looks like in terms of just like raw deck lists?
Wow. Okay. Way to hit me with the hard ones.
Hey man, I'm just giving you what you give me all the time.
No doubt. So I've got all the data from the event. They registered paper deck lists like they did last year, so it's going to take me a little time to sort through those. Just a cursory kind of reaction to what I was seeing. There were some all-stars from last year. You had Risen Reef and Rocco Slivers again. Those showed up. Ironically enough, the Risen Reef guy also placed in, pretty high. So, but looking at the meta, there seemed like, if I were to take a rough guess based on what I saw there, it was probably leaning more heavily towards the mid-range stuff. So probably akin to a Common Cause meta, where you have like more mid-range, more control present. So probably, if I was to make a direct comparison, it would probably be that. So if you've played in out there, if you played in those events, then you probably know what I'm talking about. So
yeah, fair enough. Less combo. I think paper metas are always interesting in that aspect. Just bring whatever you got, right? Especially if you're not devoting as much time as some of us do to the format. I know you mentioned that there was no top cut for the event. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Apparently, in the dark corners of the, in the basement of whatever of the web, that's kind of a salacious thing, is that there was no top cut. Looking at it, so RIW, that store produces champion pro player, Magic players. Yeah. So their origin story is deeply rooted in 60 card Magic. So if you look at it culturally, it wouldn't surprise you that they would just do a best record type of award system. So looking at it through that lens, I'm not necessarily surprised by it. Now, whether or not that's better than 3 rounds and a cut to, or 4 rounds and a cut to top 4 or something like that, I mean, that does provide like the opportunity for an underdog advantage. So like here recently, for like, I'm not going to name any names, but here recently for like Sanctuary and Common Cause and what have you, you're going to have this weird outlier that, populates into that 4th seat position. That you'll have like they'll have a 1 and 2 record, or maybe, something like that, where it's like everybody's got 2 games or 3 games, depending on the tournament. And you'll have that one person who's got that weird record that, by virtue of matches and, pairings and opponent win percentage, I think is the appropriate term, that is kind of like sneak into that 4th slot. Well, that's the underdog, right? So there's always a chance in a top cut that person has the chance to eke out a win, whereas conversely, with no top cut to 4, it's strictly a performance base. So those early wins become more important. So whether or not one is good or bad or the other, I'll let the eggheads figure that out. Probably, if I were to wager a guess, depending on your perspective on the thing, is probably going to have your line, or More importantly, depend on what your friend's perspective is on the thing. That's probably how you're going to align. So
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I remember like the budget cEDH event that I won like 3 years ago now, whenever it was. Um, I was like 17th after Swiss, and like someone dropped out of the event in top 16, and it put me into top 16. So I like barely squeezed in, and then yeah, because of top cut, I ended up being able to win because whatever. But yeah, it's like there's no way I'm even in the running for top cut at all if
Mhm.
it's pure Swiss. So that's definitely a conversation to be had. Maybe
Yeah.
see more tournaments play out like that.
Well, I mean, if let's make a hypothetical jump. Let's say Bobby and Chris automatically eliminate top cut. That means all those first two rounds, nobody's going to skate on their second round. As it is, people are fighting for their first round because that first win means everything statistically. And then if you lose the second one or what have you, you lose the second one. But now that second one becomes even more important. So you have, with that no top cut situation, you have people fighting and clawing and scratching and stuff like that in the early rounds, just to be able to make up on that back end. So, I mean, 6 to 1, half dozen or the other, whatever they say, really quickly. So yeah, that's that.
One thing I didn't see anything about. What were their time rules? Do you remember?
90 minutes. They listened. They listened to the crowd, and they adhered to everything. Was pretty much standard in the way you would expect tournaments, to happen, with the exception of, we didn't have to worry about the digital stuff. They did. I think it's most common online for turns to end on the player's turn. They did have the additional turn, or not additional turn, additional. Not turn cycle, but like one per player. So they added, 4 opportunities after time went. And that's regardless of whether or not there was 4 players in the pod at the end of the game or not. Each
I was
player.
gonna ask that because I
Yeah.
know last time it was like the number of players plus 1 turns or something.
Yeah. So this was the number of players capped at that. And if there was 1 less player or 2 less players, then it, still counted the 4. We only had 1 draw out of all of that. So it really didn't come up, but it's people hold events differently. That's just the way that it is. So
Yeah.
I guess the big thing, and the reason why you're asking this question is because you're smart like that. Players should know ahead of time what to expect. And this is only the second RIW, so there's an opportunity for it to be a little bit different next year. It's probably where it is going to be at for next year compared to this year. Last year, there was definitely a little room for improvement. It seems like they closed the gap on those items. You'll be happy to know that we weren't in the Chinese buffet this time.
Hooray!
We were actually in the event center of the store. So, yeah, that was that.
Nice. Yeah, the buffet was an interesting venue, to say the least.
That's where the food was.
Yeah, no, I had no complaints on that.
Mhm.
All right, let's see what else we got. Is there anything you want to talk about meta-wise for like the positioning of Weavers, especially considering the last 2 tournaments?
Actually, yes. Yes, there is something I'd like to say.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, ironically, the whole time I was sitting there, so let's start. I'm trying to figure out my entry point, and I think I got it. So I ran some numbers earlier today while I had 5 minutes at work. So let's start actually with Malcolm Kedis turn 3 win from last year. So the cards that were in that player's hand, there was a 1 in 17,400,000,000 chance of having those cards. Thank God for AI, because I wouldn't have been able to do that longhand. So that was for turn 3. For a turn 4 win, calculating in the capabilities for a top draw or top deck of specific cards, that's a 1 in 373 million opportunity. Okay, so if we're looking at yeah. Well, I mean, just the ability to draw a card and all that stuff changes a lot. So, looking at Malcolm Kedis, which is considered to be one of the better decks in the format, and we compare that to Weavers. So what I did is I set up a scenario in AI where Freed from the Real had to be drawn. So it had to be one of the 7 cards drawn. And you had to have 2 lands. I didn't specify which, but 2 lands. Because if you build your deck right, it's going to automatically be the 2 lands you want anyway. And a 1 mana aura and a 3 mana aura. So the goal was to have 4 mana in play on turn 2 and untap turn 3 with 4 mana, if I'm saying that right. So have both auras deployed on turn 2 and then untap into 4 mana, and then you play your third land, whatever that looks like. Now that's, from what I understand, that's not a winning set of numbers because you don't have a land untapper out and all of that. But what that does is that sets you up for that turn 4 win. So kind of running through the steps to get you to that turn 4, untap, and go. So what that turns out to be is 1 in 2,000 hands drawn will get you that result.
Yeah.
So let me repeat the best odds for the Malcolm Kedis. That's 1 in 373 million versus 1 in 2,000. Now, I don't have to make any commentary on the position in Gretchen or Weavers in the meta because I just did it.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been like the strength of Weavers, right? It's just stupid consistency at pushing for that turn 4, turn 5 win. That's what the deck does.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that, so let's combine those numbers. Those are all anecdotal. They're statistical, but the anecdotal experience of that is you're not likely to get those hands. You're more likely to get something that presents on a turn 5 or turn 6. So these being critical turns. So with regard to my play experience this weekend, let's get into that in a second. So circling back onto where I was going to say Gretchen, but Gretchen and Weavers, yeah. So Weavers, it's my humble opinion that Weavers, if you put Gretchen and Weavers on a spectrum, Weavers is on the fast end, Gretchen is on the slow end. Gretchen has the opportunity for these early wins, but the general, programming for that deck is like accrue value. Oops, I overwhelm you with all of the things, whereas Weavers is like you're trying to thread in and slip into some specific gaps in the turn cycle. So looking at that, I think that and I hate to say his name, but I think Gator in his interview last week, where he's talking about teaching players about removal. See, I'm going to expound on that a little bit. Ensuring player responsibility. I think that's the more equitable thing to say, because ironically enough, as I'm playing this combo deck, now getting into that thing that I was going to say, playing this combo deck in this RIW meta, and what I was experiencing real time, is that mid-range players, yes, you guys, mid-range players are off when they should be on in those critical turns. So they're ramping up into doing the thing that they want to do, and that's the timing that Weavers is exploiting, is that critical setup time for I've seen I can't even remember the name of the deck, and I'm so horrible at this. There was a Rakdos commander built Voltron, basically says, sacrifice an artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on this. I can't remember exactly what it is, but
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
the people out there are screaming out there. Write it in the comments below. Puzzle needs the help.
I can't name it either. So,
yeah,
you know.
Puzzle's channel needs the help. So I saw that deck, that commander, via Cranial Ram, have 17 power on the board on turn 5. One-shot kill, ready to go on turn 5. Now, they had to untap with it and start engaging. So, if we're doing the mental math here, all my combo people are screaming, yeah, that's too late, son, blah, blah, blah. Okay, sure. But what if that person had an 8-power commander on turn 5 instead of a 17-power commander? What if they held back just one thing and left up a piece of removal? You know, what if each player, because this one particular pod that was probably the most impactful for me, I was the only combo player, and we had essentially a Voltron and 2 mid-range decks at the table, and they were just tapping out, you know, setting up, and I was trying to do something, and I got interacted with, but it's kind of funny in that moment. I know we weren't going to talk about matches, but in that moment, I had a tutor. So basically, as they were targeting my one wizard to destroy it, I tutored for the other wizard and set myself up for, you know, if not the next turn, definitely a later turn with some protection. So just being able to apply that pressure, it was not... Weavers was applying pressure that was not reciprocated. So that's when we talk meta, because I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but it seems like I am. When we talk meta, that's the specific thing that people are referring to when they say weavers. Now, it's not guaranteed that you're going to be able to apply that pressure over and over and over again. I know some folks say, oh yeah, the consistency allows you to apply pressure every turn, blah, blah, blah. Not really, because there were several turns in a row where I would go to combo and I would be thwarted, and it would take me several turns of digging, several turns, maybe 2 or 3 turns of digging. Just to get back to a spot. Now, that's the time when you wish you were playing Gretchen, because 7 mana for 2 cards is a lot. But yeah, it's one of those things that Gretchen, Weavers, these 2 decks doing this very similar thing must be respected turns 4, 5, and 6. After that, I mean, if they pull off a win turn 8, turn 9, okay, cool, you're on curve. You know, you're in the average for combo wins. Good job.
Yeah, and not only that, but like if the Simic deck is comboing on turn 9, it's probably too late for you to do anything about it anyways, realistically.
Yeah.
Like,
so yeah. So with respect to the RIW meta, there was a lot of blue-black. There was a lot of black-green. There was a lot of Rakdos. There was a lot of black there. There was a lot of opportunity to interact between 4, 5, and 6. And some folks had it, some folks didn't, you know? And I mean, like my first win was actually I think it was maybe turn 11, you know? I leveraged, so this is a good opportunity to talk about some cards that I play and cards other people don't play. So I think everybody in Simic runs Moment's Peace. I run Tangle. Yeah, I run Tangle and Fade Away on top of those. Now, Fade Away is a fog. Okay, maybe not technically. But what's interesting about Fade Away is that it can be a resource denial piece. Only one person, since I've been playing Fade Away, has ever sacked their lands to maintain their board state, and that was Hive. And I thought that was pretty smart because Hive had a board presence that didn't necessarily need a whole bunch of lands to maintain. So they sacrifice, because it does say sacrifice a permanent. So you can sacrifice your lands, but most players won't. I was going to say do the smart thing, but also it's context dependent. Most people won't consider sacrificing their lands because it's too precious, right? They'll just sacrifice their board states, which is fine because I just fogged you, right, for the preceding turns. And not only did I just fog one player, I fogged 3 players. So I tend to think of Fade Away in that vein as a little bit of a delayed fog. Tangle is basically a moment's piece without the flashback because you get to tap and they don't untap. So it's usually going to be the same player who attacks you again, the following turn. So you just basically lock them out. And what you did is you created an opportunity for other people to prey on that player now that they're tapped out. So there's that. I have a lot of people have moved into the Vigian Graph Mage lines. They're doing so incidentally. I am whole hog. I think I've been whole hog on Vigian Graph Mage for maybe 18 months now, and I play a lot of the put a +1/+1 counter on something. I tend to favor the ones that say put a +1/+1 counter and untap. I think these are better than elves, than mana dorks, because they're rituals when you need them. And there's nothing like setting up an aura and a land untapper like early in the first like 2, 3 turns, and then hitting that sucker with an untap thing and then putting out one of the weavers and go, okay, next turn, the pass.
That is going back to the classic conversation that has been had on many a podcast for the format of synergy versus just raw card quality. Like, objectively, in a vacuum, the mana dorks are better. But, yeah, like, especially in specifically Weavers, I think the Graph Mage and +1/+1 counters are really strong. I don't like them in Gretchen. But in Weavers,
because it's a fast. So to specify to all of you nerds out there who are typing angrily in the comments, go ahead and press send because it helps the algorithm. Puzzle needs the help, but Weavers is a fast deck. +1/+1 instants are rituals. The end. Yeah.
Weavers has access to it in the command zone, guaranteed a bigger ritual target. Like, there's just so many more things going for it in Weavers than in Gretchen. But the point of specific cards, not one that you would be playing, but I wanted to touch on Spinning Darkness.
Okay.
So you had mentioned that you think like turns 4, 5, 6 are the important ones. And you mentioned there's a lot of black decks at the event. So obviously Snuff Out is going to be great, right? That's easily castable in turns 4, 5, 6 for free. Spinning Darkness is also technically free, but it takes up so much setup. Do you think it's worth it to try and play it if you're not going to consistently be able to cast it on turn 4?
Not at all, and I feel like not at all, and I feel like I'm being set up by the FBI here. No, like I've tested with it independently, like in my own like Black X decks, and number one, very rarely do I play a mono black list. So then you have if you're playing Black X, then you run the risk of, since it's the top black cards, like the cards that loot the best that would be in the graveyard would not necessarily be black spells. So like, I don't know. The setup problem is there, and then by the time you are set up, it's later in the game and 3 means nothing, I think. Because by then, Combo players with smaller creatures usually have at least one piece of protection. So, okay, let's think about that. Okay, so I'm very much an oral thinker, so I have to like say something stupid before I get it right. Hypothetically, and I'm not making a case for 100% playability, but if we're talking about free spells and having opportunity to interact with on the stack, in those maybe not 4, but like 6, 7, 8, those later turns, those mid turns, as it were, then possibly interacting for the purposes of interacting with a combo deck in a free way to add that additional spell, because quite often combo players won't have double protection. Quite often they'll just have the single protection. So being able to put something on the stack to ferret that initial piece out, to have one of your counterparts go in for the zinger and seal the deal, maybe. I mean, it's a huge risk, especially if you're not in mono black at that time, because I mean, yeah, there's a possibility that you just won't have much in your yard at all. So I can outline a corner case for it in that way, but caveat, asterisks.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one because it takes an awkward amount of setup compared to, Snuff Out or Thunderclap, things like that, where, the setup is have a mountain and accept that you're going to lose it instead of losing the game, or lose more life because you have a swamp. Those are like, you're going to have those. Whereas Spinning Darkness does take a lot more setup, and it's not like you can just hard cast your Spinning Darkness on turn 4 or 5 realistically ever.
Yeah, I'm not using a ritual for that. Yeah.
Like, you're not winning that game anyways.
He's holding up 6 black mana. He's got the black cyclonic rift. Yeah.
Yeah, so like that. It's a foundry.
No.
Or whatever that card's called.
So looking at mid-range, it's funny. You got an interview of a person who won a tournament with a combo deck. But the whole time, if you plural know me at all, I'm doing in real time assessing what it is that I'm seeing, all of that. And speaking of, just to talk real quick, those turns that I talked about earlier, where you're like not doing anything and you're trying to regroup, politics. Now, I got called a lot of bad names. So, well, specifically one name over and over again, but I got called a lot of bad names. Oh, you're slick, blah, blah, blah. No, here's the key to politics. You tell an objective truth, and that's the thing. Not one singular thing. All right, I'm talking to everybody here. Listen. Uncle Clay talking. Not one singular perspective is true at any one moment. Your perspective as a player playing your deck is one thing, but there's 3 other perspectives at the table. Now, if I tell you something that is plausible, that's an objective truth that is plausible. So going back to a very specific circumstance, one player had me dead on board. They were doing the majority of attacking to me, and all I did was rightly tell them that when they tapped out on their next attack to kill me, this person over here was going to laser sight them out. Now, that's the thing. I didn't say it like, bro, you're just going to take us both down. I was like, hey, it's your choice to kill me. It is what it is. However, when you do, this is likely going to happen. That's an objective truth. In the moment, that was true. So all they had to see was like, okay, maybe they had to hold some shields up and do less damage to me, which left me alive. I actually won that game, by the way. But that's the thing. By heavily focusing on me, they opened themselves up to all of this stuff, which allowed me to provide them this truth. So I forgot what I was going to go with before that, when I got onto that tangent. But looking at mid-range decks, this is where I was going to go, and this is the perfect segue. So what that player and the other 3 players should have done, hot take, here we go, Put your rain jackets on. Sprinkler system's about to go off. Mid-range players, any deck that has an aggressive component to it. How about that? Any deck that has an aggressive component to it, if you outnumber the combo players, if it's equal or outnumber the combo players, you need to be talking to those other decks with aggressive components. Because in that table, I was the only combo deck, and if each one of them from the onset said, hey, as soon as I'm able to start delivering 4 or 5 damage a turn to the combo player, I'm going to do that instead of swinging 10 or whatever, trying to chop down the tree as fast as possible. And what that does is allow them to dedicate a little bit of resource to the problem, the combo players, right? And if you think about the number of turns, if it's 4 or 5 damage per player in a turn cycle, how many turn cycles you got? 2. You know? So what they're doing, dedicating a little to the combo player and then maintaining resources, either protect against each other or provide that interaction if they need to. At least 2 players need interaction. Y'all can talk about that shit too. You know, who's going to do what? Like, hey, sorry, bro, I got to tap out this turn to advance my board state. Now, if everybody starts getting greedy, goes off the rails. But as I'm watching these games go down as the combo player at the table, and I'm thinking, like, you didn't have to hit me for 10. You could have hit me for, 6 and held that up. I'd still be dead because they would, that sort of thing. So that's the meta. That's the thing Clay is seeing happening and shaking. I forget. We started somewhere and then we ended up there. No regrets.
Personally, I don't think there should be any communication between combat players. I think they should just run into fogs, personally.
Okay. No, so no, this is perfect. So that's the thing. Puzzle, you're going to play the role of a combo player. You're going to play the role of a combo player who may or may not have another combo player at the table, and the rest of the deck is the rest of the pod rather is non-combo. If somebody swings all out at you, what are you going to do? Fog.
Yeah, pretty easy.
If somebody swings one creature at you, are you going to block?
Maybe not. Depends on what it is.
Depends on what it is.
I've had that exact situation where it's like, it's not worth fogging. So, you just sit on that moment's piece and it feels awful for the next 3 turns until you're forced to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you're already at 5 life instead of 30 because you fogged the big swing. And that means you've got 3 players that can deal 5 damage to you. Moment's piece, flashback, you still done.
Yeah.
So those are very viable things to keep in mind.
We just solved mid-range right there. You came for the combo, you got the mid-range. You're welcome. Leave a comment. Puzzle needs the help. Do a like.
All right. Let's see. Is there anything we haven't touched on? Do you want to touch on any card-specific stuff for your deck list, or no? Save that for another interview.
So, we talked about a few specific cards. So the thing that's left that I'm doing, or did do, that, so I still had the Trinket Mage Life Spark, in there. There was a couple of times where that could have been relevant, and it kind of felt like a nice tool to have. But also, I'm not playing Ether Spellbomb. So imagine my dismay, because I haven't. What are
you doing?
Yeah, I've goldfished and actually played the deck a lot the last week, but it never really came up that maybe I should tutor for an Ether Spellbomb. So in the heat of the moment, I'm looking for a Spellbomb because I got to answer a thing, and it's like, no Spellbomb. What I did is I pivoted it because it was my first round. There was a Elvish Aberration, whatever that black one that gets power and toughness equal to the number of elves in play and in your graveyard. So I pivoted and I got the relic and basically nuked their yard and cut them in half basically. But before doing the Moments piece. I cast Moments piece in that game as well. So I was able to pivot. So anyway, I'm unsure whether or not I'll keep the Trinket Mage, Life Spark, Tanglepool Bridge, and Darksteel Citadel in there. Those are all real techie pieces for if you are playing in a mid-range meta, especially. I was going to say non-bounce, but even that non-land permanent clause helps you out there. But yeah, this in one of the games where I had this set up, I had the Life Spark Spellbomb in play. I had a Darksteel Citadel with auras on it. I had it ready to go, and one of my opponents had an Ether Spellbomb nullifying that line, so I couldn't do anything with it. But yeah, like that, I'm unsure of whether or not I'll keep in. I did add in Snap Archaeomancer last week in preparation. We'll have to circle back to that here in a moment. Largely because I can't remember the piece of point removal that I had in there, but Snap is an adequate piece of point removal. I wasn't really thinking about it in terms of the Archaeomancer. The Archaeomancer was actually the risk, because in the games that I've played historically and in the last week, goldfishing, getting 7 mana on 2 lands is actually a little bit more difficult than you think it is. You usually have like 5 or 6, and that's the number. But getting that magical 7th is actually not common. So I knew there was an outside chance that I could use the Snap Archaeomancer for that reason. But it was more there because there's a lot of great other spells. If I needed to get back a Tangle or get back a Fade Away or something like that, I figured that was worth the risk for playing that. The main inclusion was for Snap because because I leverage towards the Graph Mage. I love playing and tutoring for the Graph Mage, and all of the or the freed alternates. Snap is just a great, because it's like, okay, bounce my creature, untap my lands, play it again. It's just a great way to save the moment and then re-inject an opportunity to play it again and combo off. So there's that. So regarding Weavers, now that you've made it 40 minutes into the interview, I didn't know I was going to play Weavers. I didn't know I was going to play Weavers until I woke up that morning. I took TPI, I took Sir Conrad, and I took Weavers. All of them, I had doctored up the list the week before. TPI was a little different because there was a Bloomburrow card that I wanted to get to include. I even added a card to Conrad. Printed out the list here at home, took all 3 with me because you had to turn in a paper list, and basically scratched out the one or so cards per list that I changed, and then started. I sat down with Lobert on Friday while we were waiting for the Airbnb to open up in RIW. We're just hanging out, and I was like, hey, let's do some test hands with TPI and Weavers. And kind of started getting the inkling, because TPI is great because it has fast hands also. And then also it has the opportunity to combo on top of other combo decks. So between the fast hands and that opportunity to just layer right on top, it was definitely a contender. But in that play testing, I noticed that, man, it really is difficult to get 4 combo cards together. Really difficult. So in play testing with Weavers, I was really having these conversations with Lobert of like, okay, which hand would you keep? Why would you keep it? Okay, let's play it out. Let's draw some cards. And then in that moment, I started kind of studying like how he would play the deck versus how I would play the deck, and we'd have conversations about the minutia of that. I mean, thank you, Lobert, really, about that kind of stuff, and really just kind of mulled over that as we were playing games into the night, and then waking up in the morning and just like, I guess it's time. I guess this is what it is. It wasn't because somebody won with it the week prior. regarding that kind of stuff. It's funny to play games and be like, oh, you did something somebody else did. After I won the event, people that have known me for a long time be like, hey, it's a good thing you dusted the old girls off and started playing again. It was the deck that I was in progress of updating at the end of last year when I actually pivoted to developing Sir Conrad and developing the mid-range meta. And if you remember any of that stuff out there in the world, you got a good timeline there. It was the deck that I was playing. It was the deck that I was interested in and building, that and Tatiova at the time. So it's been on the radar, and kind of getting into a little bit of history. Last year, maybe even, well, mostly last year, I always telegraphed what I was playing. Hey guys, I'll be on this. And that kind of lasted up until maybe the first event of this year. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stop doing that. So people were still predicting that I was going to play Conrad, but I did, but I did until I didn't. I was also, I know this is anecdotal and it just felt horrible saying so, but like of the first like 4 tournaments this year, ironically enough, people were like hating me out of the game. Like in that first round, that first critical round. So I was like, man, I gotta change something up. So one event I took Crackling Drake. I was like, screw it, I'll play something different. If you're playing control, nobody can hate you out, that first round, because they're not afraid of that. And then the following event, I played TPI. So like I've been playing different stuff the last like couple of months, intentionally breaking away, trying to get back to the roots and all of that. So this is not that strange for me to bust out something like this. Diatribe over, period.
Yeah, as much as I hate green, it's good to see you bowing down to the Simic overlords of the format once again, returning.
Yeah, well, the goal, I think my goal, number one, I think I want to have a small group of decks that I can rotate between, largely because I think we're starting to get to the point where we can kind of anticipate meta a little bit. So if we're playing in the Sanctuary, we know we're going to get into. We're playing in Kamikaze, we know what we're going to get into. Same thing with Riches to Rags. Same thing now, I suppose, with RIW. We kind of know what we're kind of getting into. So if we can pair that with the flavor of the month ripples that are happening at the time, because obviously popular commanders are going to show up everywhere. You're going to see by happenstance what people are playing in LFGs and things of that nature. So you can have the opportunity to meta pick if you want to. Or, a lot of the decks that I'm kind of reducing myself down to, I'm really comfortable playing. So if I need to just pull something out of the hat and pick it up, I haven't played Weavers I played it a couple of times at the house the day before, but prior to that, I hadn't played it, in a match in like 8 months. But I've played it enough in my lifetime that it's something that I just know how to do. So that's what I'm trying to do, is pare myself down to deck lists that I can do that with. So,
all right, I have one more closing question before we let you get into any of your closing thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And feel free to have no comment, but which is better?
Which
Simic deck? Which one's better? Which one's better, Clay? We need an answer. The world needs an answer. They want to know.
So Tatiova is still ass. So, it hurts me to say that. So, because for those longtime listeners out there, that I don't buy into this like doo-doo talk or hot or all that stuff. I use hot take so ironically that I slow roll my eyes when I do it. I don't know. Opinions like that suck, and they do no justice to the community. So saying that Tatiova is ass really pains me, because that's a deck that I have really poured a lot of energy into, and it's really fragile in the worst way. So now it's got a great combo line that's really difficult to interact with, but getting to that point is the journey. Am I right? So
Yeah, unfortunately, you are correct there.
yeah. So by the numbers, Gretchen is probably the best Simic deck. Oh, let's not forget our Lord and Savior Parcel Beast. Once again, great in concept. It's probably a deck that those who care about the minutia of rules and interactions and all of that stuff probably get a real big hard on for, because it is such a nuanced and complicated thing. But just like Abdel, it all focuses down on that mutate, right? It's got a singular point, So Abdel players get real mad when you blow up their Abdel when Abdel's doing the Abdel thing, but like that's the point of interaction. Parcel Beast is the same thing, and I think Parcel Beast is you still if the creature is
it still resolves, which honestly is probably worse.
Yeah. Because how do you get it back? How do you get it back? I want it back.
But yeah.
So I mean, that's the thing. Let's give a small shout out to Risen Reef. I wish I could remember the player's name, but it's the same guy that played last year. He's got a longer form mid range where it's all evasion, and he's slowly setting up a board state, and he's got his control pieces in interaction in hand, and he leverages them in a very smart way. He's a very skilled player with that deck, and he was able to pull out some success. And I feel like if he played more often, which admittedly he said he didn't, he would actually be pretty good with that list. So it's not a combo deck, but I mean, as far as Simic is concerned, I mean, it's
Simic crit rate is concerned, it's got to be up there, right?
Yeah, it's got to be up there. It's probably the only one. So that leaves us with Gretchen. Gretchen, statistically, and all the data, is the Queen of the Hill, undisputed Queen of the Hill. As you well know from your experiences playing, nothing is guaranteed. So if you're one of those players that has a difficult time figuring out what to do in those downturns where you were doing stuff one turn and then you're not doing stuff anymore and you're going like a turn or two and it's like, oh my God, what do I do? Gretchen is probably the better option for you because you have a built-in thing to do for that. Comparatively, Weavers just doesn't have enough data points because it was a top deck for a while, and then people got used to it, and then it didn't win, and then people stopped playing it. So, is this the rise of the Weavers again? No. Gator won with it. I won with it. Guess what? Next tournament, people are going to be like, oh, boom, you don't win. They'll just figure out the interaction points, and then that deck will fade into obscurity for another couple of months, and then it'll come back up. If it really, hot take. If it really was the champion of all decks, then the person who won with it last time will play it again at the next tournament.
All right, we did it. We got a hot take out of it.
It's not that I'm not capable. It just feels dirty.
Fair. Yeah, I played Weavers a long time ago, and I dropped the deck because I could not untap with Lay Weaver for my life. And yeah, I'm sure it'll get back to that point, especially after this here soon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really think Weavers is solid. I think it's a bit worse than Gretchen, but really not by much. I think if you're choosing between the two, it's very much the personal preference and identifying your strengths as to whether you're better at knowing when to find that gap that's the critical turn to go for it with Weavers, or if you'd rather hold your interaction and just wait until there's literally no way you can possibly fail.
Well, for both decks. So all right, we're gonna have another close coming in a little close. Yep, Uncle Clay's gonna talk again. Yep. For both decks, so there's some discourse happening now about like why you would kill the untappers and stuff like that, and the point that's being delivered is not exactly. I don't want to say honest. That's not what I'm saying. It's not exactly entirely correct. Turns 1 and 2, maybe even 3, depending on how late that is for the Gretchen and or Weaver player. Turns 1 and 2 is the same thing as killing an early Malcolm. Turns 1 and 2. If you take out that untapper right at the beginning, you created a tempo deficit for the Malcolm player, for the Gretchen player, for the Weavers player. Once we start getting into turn 3, 4, 5, whatever, then that gives them the opportunity to deploy multiple untappers, and then it's inappropriate to bolt the bird, as they say. But in those first 2 turns, if you are able to hit them pretty succinctly, you created a little bit of breathing room for yourself. Now, that might be a little different than some of the things that's being said right now. We can discuss that on other channels, and I suspect we probably will. But yeah, any combo deck thrives on cheating on the tempo game. And if you can disrupt that, the reason why a Malcolm player kept the hand they kept is to deploy that Malcolm as early as possible. As early as possible. So if you disrupt that, you nullify their hand. The reason why they kept it. Now, that might not necessarily be true for Gretchen and or Weavers, because if they're deploying now this is something I haven't figured out yet, it's more appropriate to deploy the land untapper first or the land aura first. That's a discussion to be had by people other than myself. But if they're deploying that land untapper first, you just denied them mana.
Yep, absolutely. Quotes from Clay. Hey guys, identify key pieces and deal with them.
But only in the first 2 turns. Anything beyond that, and you go like, well, Clay told me to do this on turn 4. No, I did not.
No, at that point, save it for when there's a free targeting.
Yes. That's how you beat this deck. That's how you beat these decks. It's just like that.
Absolutely. I think that's a very strong point. I think that covers pretty much every point I wanted to touch on. Is there anything left that we didn't hit that you want to touch on?
Well, I mean, if they watch this video and they made it this far, I want to extend a big thank you to the folks at RIW, Pam, John. Those guys are so gracious. They paid out more than they took in, which I suspect they did last year as well. They're all about the community. There's few events that will actually do that, for the love of the game. And their crew absolutely does that. We've got a tentative date, set up for next year. Myself and some of the other RC folks are trying to work on some ideas to help spice that up. Maybe bring a little bit of love to RIW as a thank you for everything that they do. So, I mean, there's that. And for the rest of you, play these damn tournaments. Show up. I still subscribe somewhat. I mean, I'm not the Ratatouille anyone can cook guy anymore. You have to be smart about what you're bringing to these events. However, I just saw a Golgari deck, an Elves deck, put up 12 power on turn 4. I just saw a Rakdos deck put up 17 power on turn 5. These are big numbers that need to be wielded responsibly. And I think there's still opportunity for people to shoot these gaps. Analytical study of the tempo between turns and how these decks are operating, I really truly feel that you can build, as long as it's not monocolor, a 2-color or so deck that can exploit these differences in tempo between turns as these, I really truly believe that's the key to solving this thing. So solving,
And if you would like to get any kind of information on such a niche topic, such as the analytical view of statistics on competitive Pauper Commander, where could you possibly look for something?
there's this group of guys. Sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 2. I don't know. Oh, and there's this other guy who like puts out this report thing, and then they do a video quarterly, right? Yeah, it's got to be quarterly.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Surely it's not once.
We've asked them to do it monthly, but like, it's just not time for that yet. But like at least quarterly, they do say, "Oh, cPDH.guide to YouTube." Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all right. They're all right. Especially that Dallas guy. He's got a lot of respect. I made him blush on.
But yeah, with that, I think I'm going to close it out. You want to close it out, or you want me to? My guest,
Please do.
not host. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in to cPDH.guide today. Big thanks to my not host of the show, Clay over here, for showing up. Once again, big thanks to RIW for hosting the event. Wish I could have made it. I'll make it next year, I hope. And I hope you guys will too. Leave a like down below. Comment. Let us know your thoughts. Tell me everything we got wrong. Give us the name of that card, because I still can't think of it. And subscribe if you haven't already while you're down there. Thank you guys for watching. Have a great day.